Thank you for coming to week 4 of Off the Clock. I know there was a little confusion and I apologize. Thank you for bearing with us. But today we have the wonderful Jacob Allen here to talk about the history of the Pajama Game. So please, let's do a round of applause for Jacob.
Hello, it's lovely to be with you today on the beautiful Cape Cod. And for those of you who are feeling put out because you thought you were going to go to the conservatory and ended up having to walk over here, I promise this is a far lovelier and prettier place to be and surroundings to be in, so it's well worth the confusion. Like she said, my name is Jacob Allen, and I am currently the chair of the Department of Theater and Dance at the University of Memphis, where I am also professor and head of the music theater program. Though I have been in Memphis for 11 years, I am a Maine native, born and bred, so I'm always excited to be up here on Cape Cod. And I am an alum of the College Light Opera Company. I was a performer for two seasons in early 2000. And this is my 12th production that I have directed for the company. I believe my first one was in 2012. So this is a place that's near and dear to my heart. This is very special for me, and I'm probably going to get weepy because it's what I do. But although we were able to produce theater at the University of Memphis this year, and I'm very proud of the fact that we were able to continue training young artists in the craft that they love, and my role as chair, I get to be producer for that, right? So I'm basically writing checks for things. So this is the first time that I've been able to do art. This is the first show that I have directed since the pandemic. This is my first time working with a cast since February of 2019, and so it's been a real joy to do this. And it's also been a joy to work on the Pajama Game. Modern American music theater begins, a lot of people say, in either 1924 with productions like Nona Nanette, or 1927 with Showboat. That's the date that I set. And the golden age of American music theater begins in 1943 with the opening of the production Oklahoma, that then sets the standard for the golden age that will lead us into the mid-60s. And Pajama Game is one of those pieces that builds upon that lineage. And though it is, at the end of the day, a delightfully fun romp, and it's my hope that all of you will find yourself laughing head over heels this evening, it only is able to do that through the craft that it was created with. And it's really intriguing to me, even though it may ultimately be futile, to contemplate how much richer our cultural legacy might have been if any of the following things might have happened. If, say, Mozart had lived past 35. If Schubert had lived past 31. If Arriaga, and if you don't know who that is, you can Google it after the lecture today, lived past 19. Or perhaps if James Dean had made it beyond 24, or if Van Gogh had made it beyond 37, if Gershwin had made it beyond 38, or if perhaps the composer librettist of this evening's production, Jerry Ross, had survived past his early 20s. Wow. Because this is a piece of such craft that career cut short. It's interesting to me to think of what that might have garnered us. And it makes me feel even more honored to be doing the Pajama Game. And of course, Jerry Ross passed away from a lung ailment in November of 1955, and he was only age 29, and thus Broadway was robbed from one of its brightest and most imaginative and highly promising talents. This is also the opening few sentences of my director's notes for this evening, so feel free to skip over those into the middle of the paragraph, because that's all the brilliance I have for one day. Pajama Game, written by Ross and Adler, the two met in the 1950s. And began writing together, and quickly fell under the tutelage of one of the greats of the American music theater, and that great is Frank Loesser. And hopefully that's a name that you're familiar with. If not, I'm sure you're familiar with some of his most famous musicals, those being Guys and Dolls, which probably everybody in this room is familiar with in some fashion. And interestingly enough, I have reason to believe that the musical that he wrote that he was the most proud of was The Most Happy Fellow. We were privileged enough to produce that. It's been produced at CLOC a number of times, and his widow came to one of the performances, and she let us all know that he always said that that was the piece that he was most proud of in terms of his composition. The impacts of his mentorship in the Pajama Game can be seen in a whole number of different ways. First of all, he began working with the duo, mentoring them long before this, and they had a hit song before their first hit musical. And that hit song was Rags to Riches. This is a song that was recorded by Tony Bennett, who made it popular most famously. And I'm not going to sing it for you today. I'll leave the vocalisms for the talented vocal company this evening. But I will read a couple of the lyrics. I know I'd go from rags to riches if you would only say you care. And although my pocket may be empty, I'd be a millionaire. My clothes may still be torn and tattered, but in my heart I'd be a king. Your love is all that mattered. It is everything. I love those rhymes there. I think they can only be beat perhaps by Bewitched, Bothered, and Bewildered, coming a little more than a decade before this. But their first hit musical was The Pajama Game. And it was, in some sense, not a surprise and not something that happened because of happenstance. Because the original production drew together some of the heaviest hitters in the theater industry at the time. The director of the original production of The Pajama Game was George Abbott and Jerome Rogers. George Abbott, one of the most famous directors of the period, and Jerome Robbins, a pinnacle Broadway choreographer in the role of co-director on this production. And to make sure that the dances were everything that they needed to do, they brought on a young Bob Fosse, who was just becoming a star and had recently, I think the role was Petruchio, but I could be wrong in that, starred in a production of Kiss Me Kate. And this is his very first credit on Broadway as choreographer. And he will go on, of course, to be one of the most impactful choreographers, period, and certainly choreographers on the theatrical stage to this day. So the creative team that they had working with them, we have composers and librettists, we have a mentor in the form of one of Broadway's venerable creators, and then we have a titan of the industry, two titans of the industry at the directorial helm, and a rising star in the choreographer's seat. And I said to the cast when we started the Pajama Game on last week, Tuesday, I told them, all the creative teams, they went on and they had a huge Broadway career. So I'm directing this production, I expect to be on Broadway. We'll see if that happens for me. However, the mentorship that Frank Lesser gave this pair went beyond his compositional talents in helping them figure out the structure of a song and how to support dramatic intention. But Frank Lesser was a compositional chameleon. And there are many songs throughout the canon that he wrote that are uncredited to him. And two of these songs appear in our production of The Pajama Game. The first is A New Town is a Blue Town, which is a piece at the beginning of the show where Sid Sorokin, our male heroine, is singing about what it's like to move to a new place where everybody seems against you, and yet you've got to figure out how to make do and how to stand on your own 2 feet and find a place for yourself in this community. And I want you to listen to that song this evening. It comes up in the first scene of the show. There's a group number with a bunch of factory workers, and it's the first solo by the lead, Sid Sorokin, so you can't miss it. And if you are familiar with Guys and Dolls, I want you to think to Sky Masterson, the male lead of that piece, and his Act 1 opening song, My Time of Day, which serves a very similar function, and I do not have a sound system here to do it, but if I were to play these songs side by side and not tell you on the front end that they were written by the same guy, I think pretty much half of you would be saying, did the same person write these two things? And it's striking to me that they're so similar, not only in the compositional style, but also in their structure in the show, both in terms of where they come in proximity and also their dramaturgic function as an opportunity to make you feel for the one of the primary heroines of the show. The other song that that is uncredited but written by Lesser, that is in the Pajama Game, is a song called There Once Was a Man. And we'll get to, I haven't even gotten to the most famous songs of the Pajama Game. So this may not be one that you remember even if you've seen the show. But at the time, this was the one that they were sure was going to be the biggest hit. This is the one that they trotted out to all the late night shows to stump for the show. This is the one that they showed everybody to try to get funding for the show. And so this is towards the end of Act 1, and it's sort of a rollicking, it has sort of a Western flair to it. We don't do this in our production, but if you heard it by yourself, you might be waiting for somebody to haul out a cowboy hat and put ruffles on their shirt and get a lasso out or something like that. And it has this sort of driving rhythmic figure underneath it that keeps it moving forward. And to my ear, it also keeps a lot of excitement building towards the end of Act 2, a place in a show where it can sometimes get a little long and everybody starts thinking, how long till I can use the restroom? And that's not the case in the Pajama Game. And these are just a few of the many reasons why this thing was the smash success that it was. But as if that wasn't enough, there are a few more. Because we haven't even talked about the numbers that actually went on to become part of the American Songbook, that actually went on to be covered by hundreds of people throughout time, that actually went on to sell millions of copies of records to be played in people's dens and living rooms for decades. The first of those that I will mention is a song called Hey There. And I will sing you just a little bit of this in just a moment. But this is a song towards the middle of Act 1, where our heroine, Sid Sorokin, has just asked Babe, the young head of the grievance committee, whom he has become enamored with, if she would go out on a date with him. And she rejects him, sort of out of hand, and he's a little dejected. So he finds the nearest thing to himself, which happens to be a dictaphone. And since he's in an office, he starts dictating himself a letter. And the letter goes, hey there, you with the stars in your eyes. Love never played a fool of you. You used to be too wise. That may be a melody that you recall. And this is a melody that, though the song is not credited to Frank Lesser, he has a heavy hand in as well. Because there is a very famous Mozart sonata in C major. I forgot to check and see if the piano's even open, do you know? Yes. Ladies and gentlemen, Beth Burrier, the fantastic associate artistic director of Homicide Opera Company, and also the music director and pianist for tonight's production. You will hear her mad skills on the piano all evening long. She's going to play for us a little sonata. Many of you who took piano lessons for longer than 5 years might have found yourself having this song assigned to you at some point. Etc., etc. Listen to just the first few bars one more time. Hey there, you with the stars in your eyes. Now, of course, it changes from there a little bit. Love never played a fool of you, you used to be too wise. But let's just do it in a new key now. Hey there, you, I don't remember the rest of the words, but the point is the melody, which goes like this. So he convinces them to take this simple little melody right out of the elementary classical canon, as classic as could possibly be, and use that simple melody as the basis, as the glue, as the foundational structure for this song. Now, I won't say that the song is simple from beginning to end, because you gotta have a gimmick. I learned that from Gypsy. And the gimmick of this song is that Sid Sorokin is recording a memo to himself. Well, what better to do than to rewind that dictaphone, play it back, and sing a duet with yourself? Which is something that the kids with their iPhones can do in 2 seconds today and post on Facebook or social media or whatever they want. But was a really clever device, especially in live theater in the mid-1950s. And it's that gimmick, along with a really simple classic melody, that turns Hey There into a song infinitely more famous, I might argue, than A New Town or There Once Was a Man. But, far and away, the number that everyone in this room, when I sing it, will recall is a little ditty called Hernando's Hideaway. I know a dark, secluded place, a place where no one knows your face, a glass of wine, a soft embrace, or fast, I can't remember, it's called Hernando's Hideaway. Ole. Yes, yes, I love that. Join with me. Yes, that's great. So this song, though it's not the one that they trotted out, and it ends up being a big production number in the middle of Act 2, there was some thought that a tango like that would help to sell the show. Because at the time, there was a mini dance craze going on. So I'm going to back up about 30 years to the 1920s. In the 1920s, we have a bunch of musicals of very little consequence. I like them. They have 2 stories. One is Rags to Riches, and that's actually the biggest story. And they tend to have names like Irene. Guess who goes from Rags to Riches in Irene? Irene. Sally. Guess who goes from rags to riches in Sally? Sally. Mary. Same story. And as if that wasn't enough, after we've done Irene, Sally, and Mary, we just write a show called Irene, Sally, and Mary, where all 3 of them can go from rags to riches. But those shows all feature movement that was sweeping the country in terms of a dance craze. Dances like the Charleston. Dances like the Black Bottom. Dances like the Varsity Drag. These social dances swept the nation, fueled by these musicals that espoused them, and you would find well-learned people doing them in parlors all across the country. Well, in the mid-1950s, there's a mini version of this happening with the tango. And it comes to the nation via a little show called The Threepenny Opera. The Threepenny Opera of Bertolt Brecht, written well before the 1950s, but doesn't really find popular success until the 1954. And there's a production which features Lotte Lenya. It runs for 93 performances at first before taking a hiatus and then running for over 2,000 performances off-Broadway. And she's nominated for the Tony. I believe still today the only time an actress has been given that honor for an off-Broadway production. That show and its popularity popularizes in pop culture the tango. And so there's a thought given to the idea that to keep the show exciting, to add interest, we can build upon this growing dance craze by putting a tango in the middle of the piece And voila, that's how you find Hernando's hideaway in the middle of Act 2 of the Pajama Game. Now, for those of you who have not seen the Pajama Game, I think it's important that I give you a brief synopsis, and I'll try to be brief. This is Jacob's 3-minute or less synopsis of the Pajama Game. There is a pajama factory, Sleep Tight Pajamas. It is run by a gentleman named Myron Hasler, and he is embroiled in a labor dispute. His workers are demanding a raise of 7.5 cents. Remember that number, it will become important. Okay? Into this mix comes a new factory superintendent in the form of Sid Sorokin, who has sort of padded his resume, so to speak, to be given this job, a major upgrade from his last as a factory shop foreman. One of the first things he does is have a little altercation with a worker who needs a little motivation, which causes him to go before the factory's union grievance committee, headed up by a woman named Babe Williams, and he becomes instantly enamored by her. And because of that, as I mentioned earlier, he asks her out, and she refutes him, citing the fact that she is part of the labor union and he is part of management. Well, at a company picnic sponsored by the union, Sid works his charms, Babe gives in, before discovering later at her house that this might really be a problem because she is really for the 7.5 cent raise and he's really got to keep this new plum of a job that he's received. And when Myron Hasler refutes all of the union's protestations for a raise, Babe Williams puts a kink in the factory works quite literally by sabotaging it and shutting down the line, causing Sid to have to fire her. It's not a good idea to fire your newly found girlfriend. Fast forward to Act 2. Sid is very interested in reconnecting with Babe and decides that the only way that he's going to be able to do that is if he can find a solution to the raise problem himself. He uses some interesting techniques, which you'll see this evening, in order to get a glimpse at the factory's financials, where he discovers that Mr. Hasler has increased the price to cover a 7.5 cent raise years ago and not told the workers. And he says, if you do not give them the 7.5 cent raise, I will go to the board, I will expose you, so you better do it. And we have to have a happy ending because we are in a musical comedy. I won't tell you what it is, but it involves Sid and Babe getting together, and you'll get to see that for yourself this evening. It is a great privilege and pleasure to work on the Pajama Game, and this group of people that I've mentioned that were part of its creation, it should absolutely be said that they are not one-hit wonders. Although we have an early death in our story, it's not before they go out and try it again and find great success with a little show called Damn Yankees. This is a show I've not yet had the privilege of directing. I was supposed to direct it last summer and the pandemic made that not happen, but it's my great hope that that will come my way soon so that I can continue working on this canon. I hope you enjoy this evening's performance. It's been a true joy to be back at CLOC. It's been a true joy to be back in Highfield Hall and in the Highfield Theater. We are still dealing with the realities of the unfolding pandemic. We have reduced staff within the company. You'll see some of that this evening in terms of very little scenery. We are doing the show primarily with furniture, hand props, costumes, and a traveler. But it is a testament to how fun and well-crafted this thing is that you do not need $1 million sets. You do not need a chorus of 500 people to make this a charming, fun evening. And I truly hope that you enjoy this evening's production of the Pajama Game. And I want to thank you so very much for coming and joining us at the College Light Opera Company. It is only because of patrons like yourself that choose to come out and keep live theater alive that this company is able to succeed. And I can tell you as an alum of it, It is truly meaningful as a young artist to find a place where you get to practice your craft. And if it can be in a place as beautiful as Cape Cod and Falmouth, Massachusetts, that's just icing on the cake for sure. I believe that I'm supposed to let you go by 7 o'clock so that we can make our way back to the theater. But I thank you from the bottom of my heart for spending some time with me today and for coming out and seeing this evening's production of the Pajama Game. Thank you so much.